Hello, happy spring, and welcome to Story Strategy Live, episode 46, if you can believe it. Today, Dawn and Nancy have a special guest. We've got Ronnie Loren here with us to talk about building angsty backstories. Hi. Hi.
Hi. I've missed our music.
You have? I can send you the file so you can just play it whenever you want.
I just listen to it while I'm working. That would be awesome.
Endless loop. Go for a walk. It's very peppy.
It is very quite peppy. Quite peppy.
Well, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about angsty backstories to round out our month of March character building things. That was super articulate.
Yes, that's a scientific word for it. The character building things. Yes, that's exactly
the backstory things. Yes,
backstory things. Stuff. That's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, excellent. Well, so Dawn and Ronnie have been friends. How do you guys know each other anyway? How did you become such good buddies?
We actually met at a local writing group. So we just kind of sat near each other one day and started, well, I would say I started chatting, but Dawn definitely started chatting.
I could have guessed.
Everyone is shocked, but I'm guessed.
Sure. Yes. So she adopted the introvert me, and we've been friends for more than 10 years now.
Long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's neat.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, happy April Fool's Day, I guess that bears saying.
Yes. I have a story for us that kind of goes with the angsty backstory and the April Fool's Day. I put a post up in the Story Saloon today for people to share their best pranks, worst pranks, whatever. So anybody who's hanging out with us today, come tell us some fun April Fool's jokes. But my story is an April Fool's joke that actually happened in July. And so it wasn't technically an April Fool's joke, but it goes with our whole angsty backstory. And it goes with kind of today. And that is when Scott and I were dating and we decided we were going to get married. I took him home for July 4th weekend so he could spend like some quality time with my father, basically. And my parents lived in out in rural Oklahoma. Like part of the instructions were turn off the paved road at the first stop sign that's 14 miles from the highway. And they had acreage and all this. And so we're there and my mom's like, so Dawn and I are going to go shopping. Scott's going to stay here with you for a little while. And my dad is like, boy doesn't want to stay here with me. Why does he want to stay here with me? He doesn't need to stay here with me. He needs to go with y'all. And I'm like, no, Dad, he needs to stay here with you. And so my dad decided that would be a good time to cut down those trees in the back pasture that he's been waiting on. And so my mom and I are pulling out of the driveway and I'm literally looking at my dad who has a chainsaw in his hand and is revving it up. Hi, honey. Y'all have fun. And Scott's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. So to the mall, and we went to a mall that we had both worked at. We knew all these people. We are standing in Dillard's talking to this woman that my mom knew. And my mom's cell phone rings and she looks down and she goes, oh, it's your dad. He's going to want to talk to you. And so she hands me her phone and my dad was very loud. My dad was big, burly truck driver, Texas dude. And he was very loud. And so she hands me her phone and I'm like, hey, Dad. And he yells, what do you mean this SOB wants to marry you?
What?
And I was like, well, you know, he kind of likes me. And he goes, no, I told him no. I told him he was not welcome in this family. I told him a couple other things I can't say because we try to keep our show PG-13, but it had to do with what he could go do by himself. And he left. He's out. And I immediately, standing in the middle of Dillard's, I immediately burst into tears, like just sobbing, burst into tears. And my mom's friend worked at the makeup counter, so she's got like the little tissue boxes they have at the makeup counter, and she's like pulling them out, handing them to me, you know, and I'm handing the phone to my mom, going, "You have to talk to him. I don't know what's going on. You have to talk to him." And so my mom gets on the phone, and she steps behind one of those little screens that they used to have set up where they would do makeovers behind them. So there's no sound protection; it's just a visual. And she steps back there, and I can hear her going, "Well, what did he say? Well, what did you say? Well, what did he say? Why is he walking? His truck's there. What do you mean he took off?" And then she started calling my dad, all sorts of bad names, like all sorts of bad names. And she's going, "Your daughter is bawling in the middle of Dillard's. Do you understand me? She is crying her eyes out in the middle of Dillard's." And she comes around the screen and she said, "Dawn, it's a joke. He's teasing." And so I get on the phone and I'm like, cannot breathe, sobbing.
Oh my God.
And I get on the phone and my dad goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, baby. I thought it was April Fool's Day."
What?
Yeah. So he thought it would be funny to call me and tell me that he'd said no. Now, Scott, to this day, we've been married 22 years, 23 years. To this day, Scott swears he knew nothing about this.
So what was he doing while this is going on? Like off chopping down some trees?
He claims he was in the bathroom. He claims that basically the way the conversation went was Dad standing there with a chainsaw. At some point, he handed Scott another chainsaw so they could go chop down these trees. And Scott said something to the effect of, "You probably already know why I'm here, but I want to marry your daughter." And my dad said, "Well, if you know her well enough to know that you want to marry her, then you've probably already figured out that there's nothing I can do to stop her if that's what she wants. Welcome to the family." And then they cut down the trees. And then Dad was like, "Why don't we go inside and have some tea?" And Scott swears he walked in and went to the bathroom and came out and my dad was yelling into the phone. That he had absolutely no knowledge of this whatsoever. And so I was so mad I couldn't talk to either one of them for the rest of the weekend. Like couldn't, like I was so, I was shaking. I couldn't breathe.
I don't like pranks either.
Yeah, I don't either.
And so my husband kept saying, you know, "I didn't have anything to do with it. It was all your dad. I didn't have anything to do with it." So
wow.
It wasn't exactly an April Fool's Day thing, you know, that it was a July 4th April Fool's Day thing. But it goes with our angsty backstories because that created some angst for me. Very much created some angst.
Yeah, I always feel like there's no way to get away from like a mean-spirited edge to all pranks. Like you're lying to somebody basically, or doing something mean, or I don't like them. Yeah. I don't like being tickled either. And I think they kind of are the same thing. Like, "Oh, but it's funny." I'm like, "It's not funny. I don't like it. Don't touch me."
It's not funny, and I will kick you in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not my fault if you get hurt.
Yes. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is angsty, building angsty backstories and that kind of thing. And so we have Ronnie, and I get to introduce Ronnie because, as I was saying, I know Ronnie's bio by heart because I've introduced her at several different things. So this is the fabulous Roni Loren. And she wrote her first romance novel at the age of 15 when she figured out that writing about boys was a lot easier than talking to them. And since then, she has written over 15 books. I should know what number you're up to now, but I don't.
I don't honestly know, so don't feel bad.
All of them have angst in them. All of them have these poor, tragic characters that had such terrible things happen to them. You just want to hug them and tell them the world is going to be okay. It's going to be all right. She is also a 2-time Rita Award winner, a New York Times bestseller, a USA bestseller, and she has a new book out.
Which has the most awesome cover.
that's called Yes, and I Love You. And we're going to talk about this a little bit of...
Have you read it already, Dawn?
I kind of get a preview.
Well, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yes. I get early
Dawn
access.
has a hand in it. She's my brainstormer when I get stuck. So she knows lots about the book.
Trust me, she knows everything about everything I write too.
I just collect stories. I just collect all of them. So welcome, Ronnie.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, so can I ask a question, since we're going to aim at angsty backstory? Do all of your characters have angsty backstories? And if yes, what's your motivation there? Do you just like the darker elements, or what draws you to angsty backstories?
Well, my professional background is I have a master's in social work. So I was a therapist before I was writing professionally. So that whole, like, why do people do things? What's their motivation? What, kind of wounded them in their childhood? Like, that's what drew me to psychology and social work and all that in the first place. So I think I've just naturally gone to that as the writer. Like, I need that. So yes, all my characters are angsty. Dawn can attest. But I need that in order to write the book. If they don't have like really good backstory stuff, then I'm like, why do I care about these people? What kind of journey do they need to go on? So yeah, it's like a core component to my writing.
Cool. Okay. Well, so I think Dawn always writes some notes for us, because I'm not good at outlining notes. But the next question that pops into my head is pretty much the first thing that she's got on her list for us. So I know that you are the queen of worksheets. And so does this mean that there is some kind of pre-writing character backstory worksheet, or basically I'm asking, how much of the character's backstory do you work out before you put hands to keyboard to write the book?
I do love a worksheet. So I'm not a plotter. I'm definitely a pantser, but
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. I need to know the characters, since I'm a character-driven writer, like 100%. So I need to know what their backstory is before I start writing. So I have all of my fancy worksheets. Now, I didn't create any of these like from my own information. I basically read writing books. When I find something I love, I make a worksheet for it. So I'll show a few of them, but some of them, like my angsty one, this is my inner journey worksheet from Michael Haig's stuff. So it has on there, what's the longing of the character? What's the wound? What's their fear? So that's like the nitty gritty of my backstory angsty stuff. But yeah, there's like lots of worksheets. So.
Do you actually fill them out with a pen? And do you keep a notebook for each book, or do you do it all?
Yeah, so I keep, if you can see, that's not the only one. These are the worksheets. This is for the book I'm currently working on. I don't necessarily fill out every single one every single time. It depends on the book. The inner journey ones always get filled out. I have central story question stuff and things like that. But that's kind of the plotting that I do. None of it's plot, by the way. All of those worksheets, except for the Save the Cat one, which is very, very loose plotting, is all character based. So sometimes I know all of them kind of going into it, but most of the time I don't. Most of the time I have I know what their wound is or something, and then I'll just put it and see, I don't know how that's going to manifest. And as I write the story, it'll come kind of more clear of what they, what their story is. So I might know okay, they had a really bad situation with their dad or something, but I don't know maybe the details of the event that happened. And so I have to write into it to get to know the character, to know what that event's going to look like. I'm 50,000 words into the book I'm writing right now. And I know that the hero has kind of a backstory where came from a really religious background, kind of culty. I don't know specifically yet the moment, the event that really scarred him. So I'm still, even halfway through the book, kind of finding it. So yeah, it's very loose, going forward when I'm writing.
Well, so now this is just me being nosy because I'm a writer too, and I'm always really interested in process. But so if you write that way and it can get to the 50% point and still be kind of working things out, how much rewriting is necessary when you've got your first draft? Are you a pretty clean first draft writer? Does it come out the way you want it? Or do you have to go back then and work things in?
I'm a really slow first drafter. And then when I'm done with the first draft, when I type the end, I'm pretty much done. My editing, every editor I've gone through, I've been with Penguin and Sourcebooks. it's always very light. I've never had to change anything extremely major in the book. I've never had to cut a lot. So I'm editing as I go. I'm constantly going back and rereading and threading. Every time I change something major in the plot or the character as I'm writing, I sort of save a different version. So, and I number them. So usually by the end, I'm somewhere between version 15 and 20.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I'm doing that as I go along. Like right now, 50,000 words in, I'm on version 7 of this one. So that means I've changed something major 7 times. And yeah, it's a really messy process. I don't necessarily recommend it to anyone, but that's how my brain works. The good news is when I turn it in, I literally do edits when I get them back in like 3 days. I mean,
that's great.
Like, done. So all the messy stuff happens on the front end.
And that's the way you want it, or at least that's the way I want it. I like to be done when I'm done, and I don't like to have to go back, and no matter what kind of work I'm doing, whether it's writing a book or my work, like I want to go through it one time. I want to get it done and turn it in. So I think we're similar in that way. Christy says knowing how you write is very interesting, which, man, I love hearing about. I just like hearing people's processes because they're all different, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and you said something very important that I want everybody to hear, and that is you said that you edit as you write. And we work with so many brand new writers that think that that's quote unquote wrong, that you can't edit as you write. I'm supposed to just blah this all out and then go back and fix it. And you edit as you write and do very, very well in turning these great books that don't need a whole lot of after editing. And so I want to be sure everybody heard that. I think that's an important point.
Yes, I will get on my soapbox about your process is your process. Like it drives me nuts to see when, you want to hear other people's process. You want to take what you can get from other people. I do that still. I still read writing books because I want to find new little things to try. But if somebody gets up there and says, this is the way, the one true way, then you leave the room. You leave that workshop. It's totally. There is no one true way. So.
Yeah, I think we all cobble together parts and pieces from the things that we pick up over the years, and things change too. Mm-hmm. What worked with one book doesn't always work with the next one.
For sure.
Well, so let's get back into backstory a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about, I know you do your worksheets, but tell us a little bit about where your inspiration for these tragic backstories come from. Like, when you start thinking about a character, how do you start picking out what their dark, broody moment is going to come from?
Well, I think sometimes the spark of inspiration is that. So, and where I get inspiration is from reading other books and watching TV, and one little thing may trigger it. So, for instance, this book, which is The Ones Who Got Away, is a different series, contemporary romance series. But the backstory of this is it's 4 women who were in a school shooting when they were, in high school. So this book happens 10 years later when they all come back together, the survivors of this shooting, for like a documentary, and they haven't seen each other in a while. And there's all of this angst and things that they haven't resolved and all of the trauma of that. I got that idea because I read the book Columbine. So really tough read. But when I was reading that, I was thinking like, we pay attention to people in a shooting and the survivors in the moment, in the few weeks after, and then like we kind of forget about them. And so I wanted to, kind of explore like, well, what happens? Like this has marked these people. They have to go on with their lives. How do they find happiness? How do they get a happy ending if they do or not? So that's where the idea for that story came from. So when I started to write that one, I knew Liv, the character in that, had survived the shooting. The boy that she was in love with in high school also did, but he left her during the shooting to go save his date at the prom. He was not with her at the prom for reasons that are backstory reasons, but so I knew that going in, and that kind of sparked the whole series. So, and the whole story. So it kind of usually starts with that one thing. With Yes and I Love You, this one that's just come out, the heroine has Tourette's. So I'm in social anxiety because of it. I knew that I wanted to write about Tourette's. My son is diagnosed with it, so it was an important issue for me. And so that's where the story started, was that backstory. So like I said, the angst part is kind of, it almost is like the seed of the story every time. So.
Well, and I want you to talk a little bit about the amount of research you do, because you didn't just read Columbine and then start writing this book on the survivors of a school shooting.
Right.
There was a lot more involved there.
Well, yeah. I mean, I watch documentaries. I read other books that have covered the topic, fiction and nonfiction. If it's like the Tourette's thing, even though I have personal experience with it, I go and do the medical research on it just to make sure I'm not missing something, because not everybody's experience is the same. There's a bunch of different, levels and versions of it. And so I'm not the person that's going to like spend years researching something, but I'm a deep dive person that I just love to learn stuff. So when I get obsessed with a topic, I deep dive, and then books end up coming out of it. So that's kind of how that goes. But yeah, it's not just one source for sure.
Cool. So we've kind of here. Okay, this is a good question, Dawn. Is there ever a point where you feel like you've taken it too far? Like, can you have built in either too complicated of a backstory or maybe like too dark? Is there such a thing?
Well, being someone who wrote about a school shooting and a romance,
a romantic school shooting.
My lines are pretty far out.
Yeah.
So I kind of go with like, because when I pitched this book, I was switching publishers at the time. So the school shooting book, and my agent was like, well, it's kind of an interesting topic for a contemporary romance novel. And I'm like, I know, but like, that's why I want to do it, because I want to do something different. So I know going in with those things that maybe it won't sell as well, or maybe people will be like unsure what to do with it. But so far, my experience has been people like something different. People are curious about it. It makes them pick it up. Now, some people will say, I absolutely don't want to read about that kind of backstory. It's triggering, and I totally understand. But even with like Yes and I Love You, the new one, it kind of crosses boundaries. It winks at women's fiction, but it also has the steam of romance. And so new readers from different areas come in and, experience the book and think, oh, I like this, or I don't like this, I guess. But yeah, so I'm sure there is a line, and I do try to think like, is this like a TV movie material backstory? Like, am I getting into the cheesy, over the top backstory? So sometimes like the book I'm writing now with that cult aspect, I have to be really careful with that, of making it not like silly, and not just sensationalized or whatever. So I do think about it. But that is what interests me in the writing, is like pushing the boundaries a little bit further. And, I don't know, that's what motivates me, I guess. So I have a line, but it's pretty far out.
Does it ever affect you doing that kind of research into like the harder topics? Do you end up having bad days or find yourself unable to stop thinking about it? Or
I think because I was, in therapy, like not in therapy myself, but as a therapist, like I was around a lot of sad stories, and I worked in adoptions. So I worked with birth mothers who were placing their babies. I was the person who like brought the baby away from the hospital. So those things like that I brought home with me. And so it was one of the reasons I wanted to kind of move into a different career, because that's real life. I do know this is fiction, even though from like Columbine obviously wasn't. So I do have, a way to step back and a way to say, okay, I need to go read something happy now. I need to go watch, some TV show that makes me happy. Self-care stuff. So yeah, I am aware of it. But it definitely was harder doing the social work than it is doing the writing. So,
as it should be, I think.
Yeah, sure.
So can you talk a little bit about how you take the angsty backstory, and then I know that you are big on a good wound, that there needs to be the good, strong wound. And we've talked on here before about how the wound basically like
Dawn froze.
Yeah, Dawn is freezing on
the
me.
moment. Are we all freezing? Am I unfroze?
Okay, so I heard wound, and then you froze on me.
I think you're okay now.
The wound, usually there's a moment that creates the wound. Like there's like that, you mentioned it with the book you're working on now, that you're not quite sure exactly what that moment is. So how do you take this angsty and I mean, you've got some characters that they've got angst layered on trauma layered on more angst. So how do you take the angst sandwich and find the wound that's going to be the big point of it?
Sometimes it's obvious, like in, the current book with Yes and I Love You, her Tourette's is giving another social anxiety, right? So, and it's because her mother has sheltered her, saying that the world's going to be cruel to you, basically. So I'm going to homeschool you. I'm going to keep you here and keep you safe. And now she's out in the world and she kind of doesn't trust herself in the world around her, that people are going to treat her kindly. So it just has made her super anxious. So that one was an easy one because it was a direct line to it. If I'm having trouble, I am a big fan of the book, The Wound Thesaurus. I don't know if you've ever talked about it on this show, but it's, a big encyclopedia of wounds. And so sometimes if I'm struggling to pin down what it is, I'll look through it and usually something will stand out of, oh yes, that would be what somebody would experience after this. So that's kind of my go-to if I'm having trouble. But yeah, I need to know the wound because obviously that's what needs to be gotten through in the book if they're going to make their emotional arc, right? So they have to move through that wound, do the thing that they're afraid to do, and go about their life in a different way. So yeah, if I don't know that up front, like even with the one I'm doing now, I can't find the backstory moment. I know his wound. Like I know that he had to leave his family and they, ousted him basically. And so I know that, but the specific flashback thing or whatever I might show, I don't know what that is yet. But yeah, if I'm having trouble, that book is great.
Is that part of the Thesaurus series?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's the red one. It's back there if you can.
There's a lot of books
right there. It's over here too.
I don't have that one. I have a different one. I think it's over. I don't know. I can't remember. Those are great.
So when you're looking at the difference between, because we've talked before about how the wounds need to be specific to the characters and people respond in different ways. Like the exact same thing could happen to 3 different people, and that's going to color their life and their action and that kind of thing moving forward. How exactly do you address that? What do you...
Well, I had to do that a little bit in The Ones Who Got Away because there's 4 books, right? So there's 4 characters that have all been through this shooting, but I have to tell 4 different stories. So their experience of it was completely different. And I had to think about in that moment what happened to them in the shooting, but also what other ingredients in their life have contributed to that. If they came home from that and their family was super supportive and everybody put them in grief counseling and all of that, they'd be a very different experience than somebody who went home and they said, you need to, just move on and not think about this. And, so it's digging into kind of what was their family like, or if they're adults, what experience have they had in relationships and things. And we all are going to react to things that are different. And Yes and I Love You, 2 different characters. Her best friend from childhood has Tourette's. He has a different version of it. He has the speaking one, and she's got more of the facial tics, but his experience is very different from hers. So I had to show, how that would look for him. So I think I don't know if you'll ever talk about strengths finders on here with the Clifton Strengths Finder.
Oh, we
test.
have.
Yes.
Yes. All the time.
I have number 4, individualization. So that means like that part comes pretty easy to me. I can see an individual as just this person, and even if they're in the same situation as somebody else, how they would process that different. So that's probably why I lean into that. But yeah, I think you just think of all that other backstory ingredients, family, traumas, other traumas they've been through. That's all going to color how this one have been affected them.
Yeah. So are you an input? Is that your leading?
I'm number 1 learner, number 2 input.
Learner. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. When you started talking about wanting to learn all the things, I was like, oh, we have to talk about strengths.
Yes. So I want to learn all the things and I want to learn lots of things with the input. So I go deep and wide.
Very good. Mm-hmm. Either Dawn fell asleep or she froze with her eyes closed. Oh, there she is. Okay.
That was kind of terrifying, wasn't it? So one more question going off of the wound part too, because one thing that we have talked about on this show often is your character needs to not be self-aware. Like
not too self-aware.
For example, not too self-aware. Your characters in the Ones That Got Away series, they very much are not walking around thinking to themselves, I behaved this way because I was in this school shooting 10 years ago. So how do you avoid that? Do you have any techniques for our writers who struggle with that?
I think I probably write more self-aware characters than average. I'm not against self-aware characters, but if I write one who is more self-aware, I make them aware that they still can't get over it. Like, I'm a very self-aware, analytical person, but I still know that there are some things that I can't get past. Like, I'm a shy person. I know why I'm shy. I recognize that, but I'm not going to change. I don't know how to change that. So I think a character can be self-aware without being able to fix it. They might need that hero character, the heroine character, to kind of show them a different way or expose them to a different part of themselves they didn't realize they had, a courage they didn't realize they had. And then I've written the character I'm writing right now is a therapist. I've written another therapist before. They have to be self-aware on some level, otherwise they're a really shitty therapist. Sorry, PG-13. Really crappy therapist. So yeah, but otherwise, you just write it as a blind spot. So you show the character on the page continually being faced with situations where they had the opportunity to make the growth choice, right? The choice that would make them grow, and they don't. Until you get to the point in the book where they finally do, and that's your character arc, right? That's how they finally have broken through. But you need to show it earlier on that whether they're aware of it or not, they can't break through this thing. They always think that people are going to reject them. They always going to think that somebody's going to leave, or whatever it is that they're fighting against, within themselves. So even if they're aware they might have abandonment issues, they still can't quite let go of that anxiety about it until whatever happens that's going to trigger their change in the book. I don't know if that answers the question in a straightforward way.
Oh, I think it does.
I think that answered it very well.
Definitely.
Oh, okay. And just one more thing on this. So how do you keep the angst believable? Like, how do you avoid, like we talked about, you don't want to have a Lifetime movie type wound, but how do you make it so dark and deep, but still make it like I can identify and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense of why they're acting that way?
I think anything could be made believable if it's written well. I don't know that, that's what fantasy books are, right? Like, they convince us that dragons exist in things. So I think if you write it well, my next book in the series, it's called What If You and Me. Her backstory is that her neighbor was a serial killer. And she was friends with him before she knew that. It seems unbelievable. However, my neighbor, when I was a teenager, ended up moving and going on. I wasn't friends with him. He was a grown up, and like killing his whole family. So these things happen. So I think anything's believable in the crazy world, but you have to write it well. You have to write it in a way that explores the emotion of it. You just not throw it out there and then not dig a little deeper into how that affected the person. But yeah, I think if you write something well, you can get away with a lot. So
I think that should be our new motto. If you write it well, you can get away with it. That's going to be our new tagline.
And then our sub motto will be, don't pay us to lie to you.
Yes.
Or you can if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you can. We'll let you. Okay. So did we have any other questions for Ronnie?
No, I think we kind of got down our list, and I feel like we've really sort of, I hate this word. I'm trying to say dove deep. I never know which it is.
Delved? Is that the right word?
It's not dove.
Delved would work.
Let's go with delved. Yes, we've really delved into the angsty.
The writers and editors can't find the word.
We have a great grasp of the English language. Anyone out there?
This is what Google is for.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, my littlest guy was asking me what the rule on something is, and I was like, "All right, here's the secret," because I was like, "I don't know the rule," and he was like, "You're an editor," and I was like, "Yes, but what you need to understand is that I'm the kind of editor who I know when it's wrong. I can tell it's wrong, and I know how to fix it. I don't know why. I can't explain it to you. I can just do it. So I'm always looking stuff up and being like, okay, here's the rule."
Yes.
So that doesn't help my kids either.
And I do story and do plot and character work, so I don't have any rules. I mean,
you don't have to reference things.
Yes, I don't have the Chicago Manual of Style anywhere near my desk ever. So that is okay.
I just hope they don't release an 18th version this year so that I have to buy yet another gigantic book to put on my shelf. But
No,
and then you have to try to figure out what they changed. Why would it change? Why did they do that?
This is why I love copy editors and the fact that I don't have to do that.
That's why we have somebody else do it. Yes, absolutely.
I'm the somebody else.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a choice you made. I can't help you there.
Well, like I said, most people don't ask. So most of the time I just do. And then when they're like, but why? I'm like, oh, fuck. All right, I'll go find out.
Do the mom thing because I said so.
Yes, it doesn't work this well when someone's paying you. But,
okay,
right.
so we have a couple of quick comments. One, Kate said, all who wander are not lost applies to writing. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And Amanda McMurray said, sorry, I can't stay. This has been great. So,
hey, Amanda.
So
very good. Well, so what Dawn was just telling me that we didn't manage to plan past March. So for those of you who are like, oh, I wonder what they're going to talk about this month. We are wondering that as well.
Same thing. We have ideas. We should say we have ideas. We have several things. We just got to schedule everything planned. I have a whole page of ideas. We just don't know which one we're using yet.
Yes.
But we also have the newsletter that we will choose a new prize for. Did we have a winner of character art, creating character art?
Haven't chosen yet. The next newsletter will announce who that winner was and also announce the next book that we're going to give away. Maybe we should give away like a bundle. I don't know how many there are at this point of those thesauruses we were just talking about.
I don't know. We'd have to look.
If there's 19, I don't want to give away the bundle. But if there's like 6, then let's talk about it.
We will talk about it. So we will have that will be announced on the Evident Ink website and on the Evident Ink Facebook page and other places. We had a 2-week vacation. We're trying to get it back together for y'all. I promise.
Trying.
But we do have the classes. We have classes available. Hopefully we will have a new class available soon.
And if you got the newsletter, when did it go out? Last week, there is a $10 discount on plotting a romance. So you can follow up our month of love and characterization with romance.
And we have the Story Saloon and we have all of our social media. And we will be back next Thursday with some kind of amazing topic for y'all.
Don't miss it. We're good at marketing.
That's why we edit stories, people. So, But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching us. And thank you, Roni, for taking time to hang out with us and talk about your dark, angsty characters.
Yes, thank you, Roni. It was nice seeing you. Thanks. All right. Until next week.